Happy Saturday to wherever you are. My name is Veronika Darwell, and I'm a teacher and the author of When You Are Curious picture book. Hello. Well, my passion is to connect with authors and educators from all over the world. And today I'm very lucky and I'm inviting Devin Roberts to join me. So let's see if it works out. And hello everybody, thank you for joining us.
Here we
go. You are. Hello. It's always
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Now I'm very happy. Yeah, every time an actual person joins me,
Yeah.
the relief is just fundamental. Anyhow, hello Devin. So nice to
Hi.
see you.
Nice to see you.
Hello. How's
Yeah. So let's look at the geography between us first. First of all, thanks for having me. Koinaini Kwana. Hi, Joe. Thank you for inviting me, Veronica. And yeah, what's the geographical difference between us? I know there's a big time zone difference. So where in the world are you joining us today?
Well, I'm in Europe, Central Europe, in Slovakia. So I don't know if you can work it out. It's one long way.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what's the weather like? What's the weather like where you?
Pretty good. It's like -11. I can kind of show you a little bit. I'll bring you into my living room because I have you on my phone, and you can kind of see outside. There's some snow.
And wow!
Yeah. So
that's
I'm in the
-11. It's kind of warm temperature for you, yeah?
Not
you
bad.
Say it's warm.
Yeah, we're getting into the springtime. The daylight is here. So I'm joining you from the Canadian Arctic in the Arctic Circle. I'm in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, the regional center for the Beaufort Delta regions, really kind of two regions in one, where our school district serves both areas. And yeah, it's a nice time of year here for us. We got lots of daylight now. And it's for us, we consider them warmer temperatures, anything kind of above -20 for us. We feel like it's good snowmobile weather, good walking weather. So everyone's kind of enjoying the change in the season for us, getting towards spring and summer. Yeah, here end of March. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's always, what strikes me is the perspective, isn't it? Like, I always think, like in the winter, like around 0 here is like warm. You would consider that warm, but in the summer, like 20 degrees, it's cold. It's like totally the perspective. And I was talking to my son about where you are, and I'm so excited because I was doing some kind of looking at the map. I'm sure you were as well, and zooming in and looking at all your schools. And I was telling my son that, I might just go and visit, and just see you guys and see you in person, not just virtually. And he was telling me, yeah, and in that cold, you won't be cold there, because I'm constantly telling him, like, if it's like +5 or it's still cold. And I told him, well, if it goes beyond -10, I don't care. It's just like that for me.
Yeah. I'm originally from the eastern part of Canada, Atlantic provinces of, from Nova Scotia specifically. But I spent part of my education career in Quebec City. And so when I moved there, it would drop to about -20 at times. And I remember that first -20 day, I thought that was like the coldest day ever. It was in my life, my perspective. And now I kind of look forward to -20 living in the Northwest Territories over a decade now. I've been here a while. And -20 to me is nice. Whereas when I, years ago, living in Quebec City for a few years, I thought that was just the coldest temperature ever. So, you adapt, you get curious about the world around you and you explore things and you change your perspective, a lot like Inquiry, right? So I have very vivid memories of a different perspective at that time, right? So, yeah.
I totally agree. It's all about perspective. I mean, winters in Slovakia used to be a lot colder, as you can imagine, and -20 is something that I experienced when I was younger, shall I say. So when I was a schoolgirl, I remember the snow was like really, like we had a lot of snow and everything. And now the winters are very mild here and we hardly ever get the snow. But we have mountains in Slovakia, they get more snow. But I'm in Bratislava, so it's a capital city. And here is not much snow, which is, I guess good for the traffic and everything, because as soon as it starts snowing, that everybody's panicking, and that it's not as bad as in England because they don't have winter tires on, of course. Why would they?
Yeah.
So when it's there, it's like they close everything and everything is shut.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we've figuratively broke the ice, I guess, by actually talking about ice and snow, right? It's always nice soft start to talk about the weather before you get into academics or any kind of big questions, right? So I always like the weather's always safe, especially in Canada. You never know. Tomorrow it could melt here as we get into the warmer months too. So you just never know. So, but yeah, I just think it's so amazing. I know it's pretty obvious these days with Instagram and technology, and internet's improved here in the north. So it's just amazing to connect with you today when you think about the geography though and the time zones, and yet speaking with you over Instagram through messages feel like we have quite a bit in common just through that inquiry lens. We talk about perspectives, right? So I've just really enjoyed, I just want to say thank you for inviting me today. I also just enjoyed some of the conversations we've already had, even just over Instagram. I think this is a much more intimate way to connect, seeing your face and hearing your voice. But you've already kind of given me something to think about or things to reflect on, and just having that commonality around inquiry specifically, kind of that broke the ice for us. If you think about it, really. That passion for education and just that interest and curiosity around inquiry strategies, pedagogy moves, all those things, two people from, really complete strangers, but here we are kind of both interested in inquiry and education, and breaking the ice from those more maybe tougher topics around education and just talking about the weather, right? So, kind of nice to connect with you, and thank you for inviting me today. It's really fun, and like I said, just really cool to speak to someone all the way, in Slovakia. Here I am in Upper Canada, Arctic Canada. It's just a pretty neat time and day and age that we live in. I'm just joining you from my living room. I'm not in my office where I can show you all my making learning visible. I'm just home with my little 3-year-old, keeping her busy while my partner, my wife, is working at the hospital here. So my other 2 kiddos are over at a friend's place, and you just gotta, you live a busy life, you make time for things that matter. So I just wanted to express some gratitude to you, Veronika, for inviting me, and I'd love to talk a little bit about obviously school and education, and probably ask each other some questions. Or I'm very curious about your school and your context in Slovakia. So, but yeah, I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that.
Well, Devin, honestly, all the things you just said, to me, it was like if I just put my favorite track on, the CD or the record, and I would just listen to it, because it just, from what you just said, I was thinking about it, and, for me, the real celebrities, like people talk about celebrities, is people like you who, who are out there connecting people, connecting schools, inspiring people worldwide, and believing in inquiry, and just sharing amazing learning and connection that goes on, and giving it out to the world freely. And to me, it's like I can't think of anybody else that would be here now that I would be so privileged to be with, because I think you guys are the real heroes, because I was just looking, actually I have to say, you were the first people. I couldn't fit the bio on the first of the post.
Sure,
Because all the journey you have behind you, and I want to hear a little bit more about it, but it's just how you got where you are, and all the people you kind of inspired along the way, and you have me here in Slovakia talking to you now, and I just want to hear advice as well, and just talking about how things are, because wherever we are, we want the same things. We want those connections. We want those authentic learners in our schools who care about each other, who care about our planet, the environment, and find themselves. And for me, that is the true meaning why we're here. So I'm just really privileged that you've time for me today and we can chat, and it's like
Yeah.
perfect Saturday for me, like people make me crazy, like teachers, what would you do?
Yeah. Are you on spring break? We're on spring break, but I have to work next week because I'm the superintendent. But most of my staff, teachers out there, I think maybe a couple of them are even watching today. They are relaxing and on spring break. So are you on a break as well, or just the weekend over there?
Monday, Tuesday off, so it's kind of like
Oh,
a
okay.
short,
Yeah.
but nothing too bad. So I will survive. Like still all these books and things to do, but it's nice to have, like, I had Thursday and Friday, so Monday, Tuesday, so long weekend really
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind of
that's
like,
really kind of you to say, Veronica, that I've inspired you. And I feel like that's a two-way street. I've seen your picture book that you shared with me. I've seen many of your posts. I feel the same way about you as well. You've inspired me. And, lots of people inspire me in education. I just recently had a really nice visit with Jessica Vance, the author, the well-known author from Austin, Texas. She was up visiting our region and working with 3 of our schools. So she's obviously an inspiration. Also, lesser known people, but well known in our region. Like, I have Erica Thompson that very much inspires me every day. She's known as Impactful Inquiries online, and she's really good at sharing out the work that we do in our schools. So she inspires me every day. And Paige Driscoll as well, Inquiry Inspired. She really inspired me to start an Instagram account and share some of the work we're doing. So that's why my name's Inquiry Inspired Leadership, because I have that leadership lens as an administrator. But it's the maybe not as well known around Canada or the world just yet, and I say yet, the power of yet, right? But those 2 and many other educators that we visited with this week, we did some school site visits. I was just so impressed with how hard they're working, of course, and just how they've really taken inquiry and run with it over the last several years in our region. We've just kind of dipped our toes in it the last couple of years, and I'd be remiss if I don't mention Trevor McKenzie, who's been really influential for us. His books and his work with our regions really shaped our focus on inquiry. Our region in particular, given where it is in Canada, we're focused on inquiry as well as indigenized education because we serve the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit populations of this region in the Northwest Territories and the Arctic Circle. So very focused on indigenized education, inquiry, and then we connect our third eye. We like to call them the 3 eyes, really. So we have inquiry, we have indigenized education, and then we also talk a lot about inclusive schooling. And so how do those 3 eyes connect? How do we do universal design of learning and differentiate our instruction? And how does inquiry really work well with that, with multiple entry points for learners and where they're at? And looking at backwards planning, whole school designs around units. It's just been really neat to see. And I'm just off like 3 site visits here in the region where I got to see whole school projects, for example, very focused on inquiry, but also the chance to do learning walks and see very specific inquiry moves with some of our staff that are impacting students that are, writing on these sticky notes, great passages and thoughts that several weeks or months ago we didn't really realize maybe was possible with some of them. But it just shows you, if you have the right pedagogy and approach with a caring educator, you can get a lot of thoughtful writing, and we're talking about inspiring, right? So for me, inquiry is inspiring. It's really about curiosity and getting to know your learner, right? So I think that's a really powerful universal message that can connect in all languages and really connect to what it is to be a human being. And I know we've gotten really, really inspired by it, and we're still learning, right? Like I said, I think inquiry is not a new topic, but our approach to it, I'd say in the last 2 years here in the Beaufort Delta, with that 3I mentality and our vision around education and community of learners and community of educators, has really shaped some great learning over the last couple of years. And this past week for us, anyway, just being in the classrooms again, as an administrator, you're in your office far too much. I think most principals, superintendents probably feel that way, most of them, most weeks. I don't feel that way this week because I was in a lot of classrooms. So that was nice and refreshing as well, because that's, where the learning happens. And here we also get our students out on the land, and we consider the classroom also the land, of course. But just being around students and not just stuck in meetings, I think is really important as a leader. So I was really fortunate to get out into the field this week with a polished offer like Jessica Vance, who's been working with our principals quite a bit. And then I also got a chance to travel around with our inquiry indigenizing consultant Erica Thompson, visiting some sites. So that's really great. But I always try to lift up lots of people. We got a lot of great people in our organization. It's a real blessing. Just to give you some context, like the Beaufort Delta Divisional Education Council serves a population of roughly 1,400 students in 8 communities across the Beaufort and the Delta regions of the Northwest Territories. So if you're to look us up or Google Map us, we're quite north. We're in the Arctic Circle. And so we service schools up in the Beaufort Sea, and then as far south as the Delta region and into, you go down the Dempster Highway from Inuvik, you can hit Fort McPherson's our most southern school. It's on what we call the road to Whitehorse, Yukon. So it's a really unique and amazing area, and I have the privilege of traveling to all those communities, all 9 schools. So it's been quite the journey. But yeah, thank you again for inviting me, and just wanted to lift up some people I've been around this week. Certainly the leadership teams I work with as well were just so welcoming. So it was a lot of fun. And Jessica in particular is a busy person. So she had popped over from California all the way to the Arctic. I'm sure it was quite the temperature change for her as well. And now she's heading home to Texas. So we had a fun week being in classrooms and supporting learners. Yeah, for sure. It was great.
I bet you enjoyed learning walks in your schools. I bet she loved those because she always shared.
Yeah, she helped us with making learning visible quite a bit. She was either starting up some new learning walls or revamping some older ones and tearing them up. So my 2 walls I have in my office, I've got a complete overhaul now that Erica and Jessica dug into them with me this week, and just reflecting on how we can support our learners, and our learners being our leaders as well as our students, not just our students, but everyone's a learner on this journey. So it might be a little cliche to say, but we really do believe that. I've learned a lot over the last 2 years. I'm 45. I've been in education since I was 24, and I still feel like I'm just taking in so much. And I think that's important to continue to be inspired and curious, right? So, that power of curiosity is important in education for sure.
I remember you mentioned just one day because he was trying to like high up, and I was really worried about her, and I thought, just please be careful on that ladder because that was...
Oh yeah.
So she's crazy, but I love her learning walls, and that's kind of my vision. And because I also visit in my little area.
Yeah.
Kind of, I would love to kind of walk in the schools where they have the learning walls, where it's not just something like on a display that's been there for a while.
Yeah, often. You got to use them, right? Use them, make them user-friendly. And students, there should be really ideally there's evidence of student learning or students writing on those walls. That's what I've really learned about.
Yeah.
They don't always have to be the most polished either, right? Like teachers want to make them look fantastic, and that's good up to a point, but how are you interfacing with those, with the students? How often are the students getting involved and showing their learning or using the wall, right? So don't be shy if you feel like your wall is messy or something, right? Like learning is messy. So I think that's really important, just to use the wall as opposed to how the wall looks. I mean, you got to organize it, of course, but I think we're shy sometimes to share out what we consider something that doesn't look polished. I know I am anyway, so that's something I've really had to work through over the last little while.
No, totally. Like make something along, you can see that like learning on the side.
Yeah.
And they can see the process as much as they can see where they're going. I kind of make it visible for them, so I kind of do like 2 or 3 steps backward, like physically that, and I show them how the kind of inquiry works, where you have to you position yourself somewhere and then you go back 2 steps, and I do that physically, and they look at me, what's going on? I really wanted to realize that it's not kind of about like just going from A to B, but you hopping around and you bouncing around and you going back and forth, and kind of learning along the way with the reflection, and also, from each other as we are, and I think it's a beautiful kind of way of demonstrating. Now we are now talking together. We don't have to do that, but we kind of passionate about like inspiring other people to, I would say, believe in inquiry, but kind of, that sounds a bit like it's not a religion, so I don't want to, but it's kind of
like a philosophy almost, like your mindset, right? Yeah.
Understanding, I would say, as opposed to believe, like recognize the importance of, or like being aware of the necessity for that. Inquire, meaningful for learners alike. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
a lot of great comments flying at the bottom there. I'm trying to keep up. There's some really nice thoughts in the chat there, the text. Yeah.
Yeah. From your colleagues. That's lovely.
Yeah, there's some names I recognize and some names I don't. So hello to anyone that's new to me and my Instagram. Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
So, Devin, you mentioned that you are superintendent, and tell us a little bit your journey. How do you get to that stage of like having so much influence and like responsibility for so many schools? Like, what was your journey? Because like, you've been busy all the last from the age of 24, you've been very busy. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background, so people have the idea about like how did you get to where you are now. Maybe
I'd be happy to answer that. First thing I want to say is, in over 20 years of being in the field, like, everyone is busy. I work with custodians and front office staff, support assistants, teachers, consultants. Like, that word busy comes up a lot, and it's, being in education where, you're raising children with families. So it's a big responsibility. So everyone feels that pressure sometimes, I think, and feels really busy. So that's why, as a leader, I think it's important to focus on what's important. So that's what, why I talked about the 3 I's for us in the Beaufort Delta. And that's the priority for us: indigenizing our practice, ensuring that we have land-based and place-based learning happening, as well as indigenize, and education as an overall philosophy too, but then connecting it to the 3 I's, so inclusive schooling and of course inquiry, which we're speaking about today, right? So, but yeah, everyone cares so much. I mean, that's one of the great things about being in education. It's the passion that you feel that when we talk about community of learners, people that are passionate about the students that they serve and the families that they're trying to help and support along their journey. And we have children from the age of 4 in our system, JK, all the way up to grade 12. So it's a long time, and you can do a lot in that time. And, with a systematic approach that we're trying to develop here, really in a lot of ways 2 years in our journey right now of a strategic plan and a long-term plan that we have, you can do a lot in that time frame if you stick with inquiry and the practices that you have, right? So we're really excited about that. But I started my career in Nova Scotia as an educator, many years ago when I was 24. And my little one wants to say hi, so why don't you say hi? You want to say
hello.
Hi? Speaking of responsibilities and little ones, I'm on daddy duty here today too, not just superintendent today. Yeah, she wants some milk, so I'm going to pour her some milk while we talk about my career. And I love how authentic and messy this is today, because I'm not in my office, and I want to show you, it's really about balance in life, right? So I was like happy to have Emmy join us today, and the other 2 are over at a colleague's house, which is great. But I'm going to pour her some milk and tell you a little bit about my career. So I started when I was 24 in Nova Scotia. Really excited about education. I came from a bit of a business background. I was heavily involved in the music industry in Nova Scotia for a while. I worked for some production companies. I actually was involved in running my own production company for a number of years. And during that time as well, I also got experience working for Molson Canadian, actually, a beer company of all things, learning about marketing and business. And you're young in life, you're curious, and you explore different topics. And I learned quickly for at least that point in time in the business world, that I honestly didn't really like it that much. I liked the people I worked with, like I had good colleagues. I liked the events that we did. I still love music. I have a little DJ turntable set up in here, and I occasionally will go online and still DJ a little bit from time to time with some of my friends and colleagues. Going to do a 90s night later
Brilliant.
in April. Yeah, yeah. So I'll promote that a little bit on my page. Kind of funny, talk about passions and talents. So that never left me, but I haven't focused on it as much, obviously, over the last, say, 15, 20 years. But when I was younger, yeah, like I was heavily involved in business, just trying to find my way in life and, pay some bills as well. Education's expensive for me anyway. I had student loans and did not have a lot of savings when it came to going to post-secondary. So I always had to work when I was studying my undergrad or my BED at the time, right? So I was always kind of doing some side jobs, or I guess the cool kids these days call them side hustles. I just called them jobs at the time. I'm dating myself because I'm 45. But yeah, so, I got into education, and that was always the dream, was to become a teacher. So even at these music events or working at Molson, and people ask me, what are you doing? What's your vision in life? Or, where are you going on your journey? It was, I want to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher, even though when I was younger, I always was involved with youth at summer camps or Boy Scouts. I was heavily involved in Scouts Canada when I was younger. So yeah, I got my BED from the University of Maine at Presque Isle after graduating from Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia. And then, yeah, I got into teaching, and I did what most people do. I subbed for a little while and then got offered a term contract. And at the time, the labor market was quite different. Right now, as an employer, as a superintendent, the teaching labor market is quite open. So there are a lot of options for employees, which I think is great for educators and teachers. I think it's great that they have choice. Talk about voice and choice and inquiry. They have lots of choice in the labor market, over, at least in Canada anyway, and from what I've read in other parts of the world too. But at the time in Nova Scotia, there weren't really a lot of jobs. So it was very competitive. There was a thing called, it was basically like a job market, job fair that you had to go to even get a job. And so I had 3 contracts in a row, but I never knew what school I was going to be at, the following year. There was a lot of things up in the air. So I was starting to get a little frustrated, not frustrated with teaching so much, but more the system and how, how we got jobs and how we were treated a little bit from the system's point of view. I liked my principals. I liked the schools I worked at, all that. And during that time, I should really mention, I got the pleasure from the time of my practicum till a few years in, I got to work with the same group of students from grade 7 to grade 12, other than 1 year in between. So that, that was pretty neat. The high schools were larger there. So, I didn't teach every single kid I had in my homeroom from grade 7, but I was in the school, I connected with them. And so that particular cohort of students I've become incredibly close with. I still talk to them. I sent a message over Messenger to one of them, yesterday, and I'm 45, so they're well into their 30s themselves and in their 20s, that kind of thing, and they have kids and things like that, which blows my mind. But yeah, so working with that group was really, really incredible, and I had other groups that I was really fond of too. But just it's really nice when you can consistently stay at a school or a community and get to know the kids so well, because you can really delve into topics deeply, right? So that was the beginning of my career, and then I kind of decided to expand my credentials a bit, and I moved to Quebec City, actually. And I worked in the private field. I went back into business a little bit, but did tutoring, like English tutoring. So I was an English language teacher on the side. And I also worked at one of the CEGEPs in Quebec City as well, CEGEP de Saint Foy. A great experience, again, teaching English and working in the English department. And I also got to coach basketball while I was there, another passion of mine. So basketball is a huge thing for me growing up, same as music. And so I got to pursue basketball there as well, and coach basketball both in Nova Scotia and then in Quebec City. So I always found that was another way to tap into students when you think about their passions and sharing your own and things that you're excited about. I was always excited about learning social studies, French, English, whatever subjects I was teaching. I always enjoyed being with students. And I think that rubbed off on them. And then also having those side interests, or what I call passions, I guess, now when we look at our community of learners here in the Beaufort Delta, I was always able to connect and be authentic around things I really loved and cared about. And I think we're trying to do more of that now. I want to connect it to present day, where we're really trying to get the learners to talk more about the things they love in the classroom. Yeah. Oh, my little one wants me to give her a moment, so I will. So again, but yeah, really about passions, right? So that's why we spend the first 6 weeks just connecting back to present day a little bit. we have a thing called a community of learners and community of educators. In the first 6 weeks of our school year right now, we really encourage the educators and teachers we work with, all the staff, to get to know the students. And so from a district lens, what that's meant is someone in a role like mine as superintendent is really try to dial back some of that data collection that we like to do. So we've stopped asking for like long range plans right away, reading levels, numeracy levels. We still use those indicators. If you look at our strategic plan, they're there. But we've really dialed that back, especially the first 6 to 8 weeks of the school year, so that teachers, educators specifically, feel like they have time to get to know the students.
Yeah.
And we still teach curriculum. There's still unit plans. There's still inquiry moves happening. But it's really like a concerted effort to get to know the students better so that we can program better later throughout the year. And so that's been a unique change to see over the last couple of years. And believe me, it isn't perfect. It's learning is messy. We've learned some things along the way that we want to make better for next year. But I love that, just that passion and sharing your own strengths and interests and talents with students and getting to know theirs. And then strength-based programming for us is very inquiry-based and a very important way for us to start the year. So it's taken some time, but yeah, someone like me who reports out to the public has to then indicate to them that this is the priority. You want to get to know your children. And that means I don't necessarily have reading data for you, in October. So we have to be a little patient as leaders and see how the system's doing and maybe measure the system a little bit differently. Maybe, tracking this, like how much we know our kids, like how well we know our kids. That's an indicator as well that, maybe for us anyway, 6-7 years ago, we weren't tracking or getting, really doing, other than teachers doing it on their own, but from a systems lens, right? So that just made me think about that, because I had that cohort growing up as an educator, and I got to know them on my own. I wasn't really part of a school system that, not that they didn't care about that, they wanted you to be caring and attend to social emotional needs, but we didn't have that like system-wide approach that we're starting to develop here that I really, really love. And it's really reinvigorated me as an educator and a leader, but more so just as an educator and someone in the field. So yeah, that was, that's a bit of my career there at the beginning. And yeah, so I went to Quebec City, studied at Laval, and I got some French credentials. So I have a French diploma from Laval so that I could teach French. And then, I felt kind of the urge to do a master's degree was part of my reasoning. And I wanted some adventure. I was still young. And so I applied on some positions one year, really around like kind of February time, kind of after Christmas, in the dead of winter in Quebec City, kind of expecting to maybe find a job in September. And I got offered an interview in a position that was ready to go for March, like right after St. Patrick's Day. So all of a sudden, in a few weeks, I was leaving Quebec and I moved to the Northwest Territories. And from there, I've spent time in three school districts, really kind of 4 regions. I consider ours so spread out that it's really 2, but we're 1 school district. But I've had the pleasure of working in 3 different school divisions here in the Northwest Territories with various roles. That I think have really helped prepare me as a leader and as an educator, right? So I've had the pleasure of being a homeroom teacher, a program support teacher, which is, our version of like an inclusive schooling specialist. So I've done that role a few times. And I also, from a district lens, had the opportunity to be a regional Indigenous language educator. We call it a Riley. So I was supporting Indigenous language instructors on their practice, measuring their levels with Indigenous language fluency. It's another topic I'm really passionate about. I very much care about Indigenous languages and revitalization of them. And then, of course, inclusive schooling. I was what's called a RISC, so a Regional Inclusive Schooling Coordinator. I had the pleasure of doing that role as well. So, the longer you're around and if you're keen, I feel like these opportunities can present themselves in life and in education, but you have to be willing to step up and do the work. And then at one point in time, I got offered a position here in Inuvik as the assistant superintendent in 2018. And for me, the really remarkable thing about Inuvik is I'd always heard how great Inuvik was. It was this community that I always had interest in. I was always curious about it. Again, talking about inquiry and mindset, because growing up, my high school principal, when I graduated high school and went to university around the late 90s there, 97, he retired, but he went back into the field and actually came here to Inuvik and was principal here for, I believe, at least 5 years. So I'd see him in the summers, and his son, John, is obviously he graduated with me, so we know each other. We've lost touch a little bit over the years, but I would see him from time to time over the summers and reconnect. And whether it was John or Bernie specifically, they would speak so highly of traveling to Inuvik, and so Inuvik was always kind of on my mind. So when the job came up, I was curious, obviously, about how I could help as an assistant superintendent, but I had a little bit of prior knowledge just kind of around what the community was all about. So it was a little bit of full circle for me to get the opportunity to work in Inuvik when my former principal had already spent some time here. And so recently I've been kind of sharing that more and more with some staff. I don't think that realized that. I'll just kind of say to them, like, hey, did you know Bernie? And because they wonder where I'm from, right? And I was like, well, Bernie's from my hometown. And like, Bernie McLean? Like, yeah. So it's just kind of neat, talk about the world being small sometimes. Canada is a large country, and Nova Scotia is really on the opposite side of the country, right? So for me and him to have that connection here to Inuvik is really special. And so that was part of the reason, why I came, and I was flattered that I was offered the job. And so spent a few years being assistant superintendent, and then my colleagues all retired on me. So I was kind of the last one standing, and ended up becoming the superintendent, whether I was ready or not. There was no one around at the time. I mean, not to say that no one else, would do the job, but I was lucky enough to get the position based on some retirements, and really tried to run with it since then. But, it's really not about me. It's about the team and the people around me. So I was just mentioning, like, Erica Thompson today, Impactful Inquiries, Paige Driscoll, who is a coach and VP in Tuxyaktuk. All the principals I get the pleasure of working with. 3 of them were so accommodating this week. Janine, Shauna, and Adam. Like, I could just name so many names, and there's so many great students here too. And last couple of years with the shared vision focused on inquiry, learning with people like Paige and Erica and Trevor McKenzie and Jessica Vance, like I mentioned, and just seeing people shift their practice. Yeah. That's what last week for us was all about, like seeing learning becoming more visible, coaches really supporting that, instructional coaches. That's such an important role, just encouraging people in the classroom, right? So yeah, I've been very fortunate to wear many hats, as they say, but at the end of the day, we're all leaders. Whether you're superintendent or you're connecting with kids as the front office staff, we all have a role in raising the students with their parents, right? So it's the old adage, it takes a village. So I've tried to wear many hats and set village, and focused on inquiry lately to get more curious about students' passions and interests and how we program around that. So I really enjoy reading, like, sticky notes on learning walls when kids are asked about things they like, or how they can make connections to things that maybe don't seem evident in the curriculum, like when they're connecting some type of movie or video game that they love, but it's connected to a text that they're reading. So that's a little bit about me and my journey anyway.
Well, that's absolutely incredible, your journey, and you beautifully demonstrated the things that inspired you with the music and basketball, and your passions and interests, and your kind of vision to be an educator and to like lead people in these summer camps and with your language teaching as well, and to see that how it shaped you, and then to kind of make it a priority at your schools. Like, let's get to know them, let's find out from the students where they are, because I know that shaped me, and I know what's going to shape them is where they are coming from and what they already know who they are, so that's just, you just beautifully demonstrated how it kind of all should work in a world. Obviously there are ups and downs, and your journey, I presume it wasn't as smooth as it sounds, and there've been some there've been some I'm sure, but what I love to hear is how you kind of encourage your colleagues and everybody to kind of discover themselves and to look within, like, the students recognize, like, because often, I will explain what I mean. Often when children come to school, it's about the output, isn't it? It's about what can I say, the questions I can answer, what can I provide. And often, we forget that students coming to schools with their interests, with their passions, with their histories, and they have these amazing questions that they can put on these post-its or recommendations, or like connections we can make with them, and we can learn so much. And I think the problem is that we forget about that, and often when the education is focused on the what can we kind of measure in terms of like the content they learned and things like that, I think children must feel a little bit left out, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and like we have our feelings, and we need to feel safe, and we need to be accepted for who we are. And if we feel like we just there to provide some kind of outcome, and if we don't, then we don't matter. It's just kind of all these, just kind of self-awareness is important. And I think in your schools, like it's underlined the safe and caring environments where you kind of see the students who are coming in as kind of ready-made, human beings. And it's not like we're trying to like anything we do is just to kind of expand who they already are, isn't it? It's just kind of that expansion that we're doing in schools. And I think I remember having a team building with the teachers, and I was asking them, how are you going to get to know your students? Like what is the way of like inviting them into your classrooms? And I asked them to write me a letter, and or send an audio or whatever, like they could record a message. I remember that one of my colleagues, she had a daughter in my class that I was about to have, and she said like, oh, what have you done? Like she just can't be more excited about it. Like she was so happy that she could actually write about herself before I even see her in the classroom. And I found out about these children, like interested in football, doing gymnastics and karate and reading books and finding out about their pets. And I had all this bank of information to start off with, and so they loved that. And they were coming in to school, and I had these letters ready, and they were like, they felt super special, and that was the start of our kind of journey together. So I was like recognizing them as ready-made people who we're going to kind of expand. It's not just something that like blank canvas, like often it's talked about, it's blank canvas, it's blank canvas. It's like that, painting behind you or something like that. It's more like that. It's just beautiful already. We just need to, we need that information. Like
I love that.
Right. And if people you interacted totally ignore the fact that you're into music and you like basketball and you're passionate about languages, if they didn't care, you wouldn't feel, welcomed or appreciated as whatever they would be talking to you about. Like you would feel like part of you is missing there, and that it's a crucial part of the classroom, I think. So.
And I really agree. The Wandering Teacher there, she's got some great posts below us there, and just saying like that should transfer to staff as well, right? Like people love people, and they know when you're not interested in them, or you're not really being authentic or sincere or real, right? And showing that interest in them. So that's why like today, I'm at home. I got my 3-year-old here, and she's asked me to do things while we're chatting, and that's my real life. I could have put my tie on and got to the office today and kind of forced Ember to sort of sit there, but like, that's not what she wants to do. So I have that social emotional connection even to my daughter. But really, that point the Wandering Teacher just made around like getting to know your students, getting to know your staff. Like if you do a great inventory of your staff and you know all the team strengths, like look how amazing your school can be, or your school district, right? So we're so focused sometimes on the indicators, whether it's a reading level, a math level. I think if we spent more time explicitly getting to know everyone's strengths and how we're going to support one another, those levels and indicators will improve over time. But there's very little research that consistently being focused on the indicators, whether it's a reading level, a math level, whatever we're talking about, even around oral language for Indigenous languages, collecting data and only focusing on data and being data driven is important to know where your learners are at. But when you're constantly focused on that and you don't really know your learners,
Mm.
I don't think you're going to really make a huge impact on those indicators that you're so focused on. So I think there is space in place for something like community of learners, at least within our BDEC vision, to really get to know our, our learners, community of learners, and our educators. I want to know what our staffs are passionate and excited about.
Mm.
And this idea that, like, if you're in education, you must be, all knowing and super serious all the time. Like, you can be silly. You can have other interests. You can bring in your interests around, like, music, or for me, basketball. I also, embarrassingly love pro wrestling a little bit, so that the staff know that about me and will tease me. And we have a little wrestling company here in Inuvik that I occasionally dabble with. So, like, those outside interests can teach you a lot, and you can really do rich things with, like, multimedia. Like, kids making videos about things they're passionate about can work in an ELA class. So I think we really need to start thinking more about education more holistically, the learner holistically, as well as the system. Because if you look, again, at indicators and data, a lot of school systems, at least in Canada and the United States, the attendance is quite low. So, learners are showing that they're disinterested in the way in which the system's presented to them by not being in school. And there's a lot around well-being as well. You talk about staff wellness and student wellness. I think, again, a focus on caring, showing that you're interested in their lives, integrating their passions, with the curriculum, but getting to know your students and integrating that curriculum with their interests in mind, I think will do a lot for well-being as we come out of COVID here now over the last couple of years, right? So there's no better time, I think, to really care about the student as a whole person. And that's not easy, right? So that's why, for us anyway, like I said, I as a leader have to be patient and make some space in place for the educators and learners to have that time. And, like I said, we still have curriculum that's taught in the first 6 weeks of the school year. We have modules, we have a Google Drive. Like, there is things planned as educators, but it's more about the prioritizing of getting to know the learners. And we hope to see over the next couple of years that will help those indicators like reading levels, math levels, you name it, as well as the attendance, right? We think a lot of this focus over the next couple of years will help our indicators. And we have other indicators right now that we're doing things right. We have some strong Canadian Achievement Test data that we had a few years ago. But again, there's systems within when you look deeply at that, that's not hitting all our learners. So we really want to look at, like, why kids aren't always attending and how we can help with that, and how do we make our students feel welcome when they come back.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just your approach, right? Like, showing the kids that you care. And teachers do this intrinsically, but I don't know it from a systems lens if we always do that as leaders, because we are focused on some of those big indicators. But for us, it doesn't mean that we're not collecting data or that we don't use data. We just kind of are trying to look at data from a more holistic point of view. And for us, those inquiry moves too, right? Like the provocations, the thinking routines, that curiosity as well, and modeling that will really help our practice. And so being curious about educators' practice, what are they doing? What are they doing right? First of all, when I do a learning walk as a superintendent, right? When I come into a classroom, can I lift something up, right? That's something I've really seen with Jessica and her visits recently. Like, she goes to the teacher right away and reassures them and finds something to lift up, because there is that uncomfortableness when it's like a principal or administrator coming in sometimes, right? So that well-being is really important, I think, and valuing what people do, because people are very passionate about education. They put in a lot of time. They do care about the students, and it's not always easy, and we do ask a lot sometimes. So valuing the educator, I think, is really important when you look at today's labor market as well as the students. Because teachers have options, like I said, with the labor market. So they want to feel valued, and they also want to feel developed. So if we're pushing them and developing them around their inquiry practice, that's a good thing. But that approach to how you do it is important. So valuing what they're already doing and what they're good at, I think, is a really great place to start. And then you can get to that critical friend, critical feedback kind of approach. So one thing that I've really tried to start doing more of is, when I do a learning walk now, is to put away my template or my pen and paper, my laptop, and just be present more. I can reflect and write down what I saw afterwards. I want to be a little bit more of a human when I come in. My wife's always teased me about being that clipboard person. You come in with a clipboard, you're making all your teachers uncomfortable. I came from a system where that was expected. I had a superintendent that trained me that way, right? So I've been programmed a bit too around the data and sort of those templates. And I still think you can use those graphic organizers, things like that. But for me, I think it's more important to connect with the learners and the educator when I come in to do walks. So that's something I'm really going to reflect on a bit more as a leader in the system, is how do I reassure the students and the teacher when I'm in a classroom that I am present and I'm not just checking a box or looking at something, you know, especially when I have voice and choice over that as a leader. I think I have to really think about, again, how I used to feel when my superintendent came in, right? Because it wasn't that long ago. But you can lose perspective when you're concerned about things like literacy levels, numeracy levels, Indigenous language levels. You get caught up in the data a bit and you forget about the person sometimes. So that's something we're really trying to work on. And we're still heavily focused on pedagogy and good teaching. Like you can do both. You can really focus on people and being caring, but you're also like focused on that good instruction. And so I think the more you get to know somebody, the more open they'll be around that quality instruction and learning the inquiry moves. If it's give one, get one, partner talk, and all the different structures with partner talk, all the different thinking routines, provocations, the amazing things you can see on Project Zero, all the great work, right? All that kind of stuff. But how are we lifting people up? That's my big question recently, is like, am I doing enough to celebrate the great work in classrooms and the great work on the land? You know, teachers are doing what we're asking, but how often are they reassured that they're on the right track, right? Is it just when I collect their reading data and it's gone up a bit, or is it, can I share out their photos and their videos and help them in Canva or something, you know, do more, right? So we have a great newsletter that I'm really proud of, that's led out of our office, again, with our inquiry consultant, Erica, and, you know, all the principals and schools contribute to that. So I think there's things like that need to happen on a more regular basis. So those are some things I've been thinking about more about, just celebrating staff and students. Easier said than done with all the other competing priorities, but I've been thinking about that a lot. And then just that whole notion of like learning walks and how am I modeling like learning and being present in the moment, and still be able to give, you know, constructive feedback, supportive feedback after the debrief or something, or in the debrief, I should say. You know, I'm thinking about that more as opposed to just like checking off all these great things. Because when I look back, like that checklist that I'm talking about, a lot of nice things were written on there. I was really reassuring staff. Yeah. But I wondered if my body language and things were like making the teacher or the students uncomfortable. So just being a little more thoughtful and intentional, I think, around leadership is something I've been learning more about recently.
That's why I love doing mentoring with teachers, because, you know, it's kind of like I can go to a school and it's just the majority of the work is the feedback, the positive feedback, you know. So I just highlight everything that I saw was good, and, you know, like it's a, you know, I see teachers who've been teaching for many years suddenly realizing, oh, I didn't realize that, oh, I've forgotten about that, oh, that's I don't even think about that. You know, I say that was so important, that was so valuable. I saw students lighting up when you were saying this, you know, like, and I see my things happening in the classrooms, and I think by highlighting these, teachers kind of start to remember why are they in the classroom? Why did they even start teaching in the first place? Because they are, as you said, you know, like the expectations are high, and the demands on all the paperwork and everything they have to provide. And then when suddenly I come to a lesson and I find time to talk to them, and I don't even work at their school, you know, like, so I'm somebody coming from side, and for them it's kind of but teachers, you know, they are kind of, because they have this association, as you said, with control, or somebody coming in like judging them. Though like the NGO that provides it's for free, like they don't even have to pay for that. They really like to do it, so that we kind of trying to change the culture of realizing that this is a support for you, this is a, like, somebody coming there, you know, and then the mentoring process is basically whatever the teacher decides is the priority where she or he wants to go. You know, that's where we're going. But it's kind of that encouragement and support and personalizing the teaching. It's kind of like finding your own way to connect with the students. You know, like I have this wonderful teacher who's constantly rethinking the ways how to connect with the students. Like she does all these different, like sometimes, you know, somebody would come also, like they would say, oh, what am I looking for? But after a few times I've been there, I see the enormous change, that the little thing that she just is micromanaging. I said it's nothing big and nothing beyond competencies. It's just these little things that but you know, to have time to think about it, to have time to sit down with somebody and actually having that dialogue where you kind of get that thought going, because you know, when you get home you do your other things, you know, and you're busy. To sit down and having to reflect on your teaching, and you know, like how to bring everything that you want to bring into your classroom and do it in a way, you know, that's absolutely wonderful. So I think that personalizing, and that's why the inquiry is so powerful, because it is about personalizing. It is about bringing your own interests, bringing your own passions, you know, connecting who you are with whatever you're doing. And it's about these connections, and it's such a, you know, I would say kind of fruitful environment for that. You know, it's such an amazing, you know, thing to have in a classroom where you're asking, like when we have when I do like a question with the teachers in the workshop, like what is a constellation, and they have these different resources, and they have books, they have internet, they have these apps. Stars, you know, and you know, like I had one group where they started to putting the stars on you know, started putting, and I was like, oh, they're just in the lab, they're taking a Mickey out of this. But then they actually, what they did at the end, they did a constellation on this colleague's forehead.
Amazing.
So they took a picture, they printed it out.
Made it visible.
That you always have somebody in the classroom who wants to do something out of extraordinary, but you know, inquiry gives you this opportunity to connect with your passions and interests, and to bring that in whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be, you know, just doing sport, but if you're an active person, you know, you can approach anything through that. So I think that's really important. So
yeah, I love that. I love just the extension there, and I think some of that probably comes from that reflection that teacher was doing. And you know, you can be sometimes too reflective, a little too hard on yourself, but that constant just like, you know, thinking about what you're doing and being intentional next. We talk a little bit about like thoughts are like random, they pop up all the time, but that thinking versus thoughts, right? Really thinking about your practice and your students, that's probably helped, you know, those students get to that deeper extension of that constellation project, right? So just being really intentional, right? So like just looking at the chat, like impactful inquiries, right? You know, the phrasing, ecosystems of well-being, I think that really what you just described really encapsulated that, right? So that idea of that well-being, you know, within that ecosystem. The classroom is an ecosystem, right? And then the wandering teacher, she also talked about how that sets the tone for assessment. I think talking about some of the learning walks and things that we were doing, right? As opposed to giving, you know, as opposed to giving a teacher, you know, a grade, right? Like we want to give feedback, but do it in the right way, that we're encouraging people to stay in the field and become educators for life, right? Like lifelong careers, you know, that's what I want to see, right? And we're losing teachers at times. You know, when you look at things across Canada, United States, there's a lot of, you know, on Instagram, you'll see posts about people leaving the field, and that breaks my heart, because you know, raising a student or raising a child and being part of education is awesome. And I'm glad that there's people that are like-minded here today with us, but I think we really got to do more to celebrate students and families and educators, and lifting up practice is part of that, right? So yeah, I think myself anyway, I'm going to model the model a bit more, and use sentence stems and ask the reflective questions, and maybe not be so focused on filling out a form or a piece of paper while I'm in front of a classroom, right? Get engaged and be part of the lesson, right? So I'm learning still as a leader, right? I'm not perfect, and I'm an imperfect leader, I often say, at least in my own self-talk, in a way that I want to be reflective and get better. So I don't think, you know, I'm 45. I started when I was 24. I've had lots of hats and roles. I'm very fortunate in my career. I certainly don't think I have it all figured out. And I learned a lot last week, learning a lot even today, and reading the chat and listening to you, Veronika. I think you have to be a lifelong learner. So yeah, thank you for having me. Koi Nini, Kwana Haicho, as we say up here in the north. You know, Masi for having me today. And you know, I love the dialogue, and whether it's with ourselves and just the people that were kind enough to put their thoughts in the chat too. Learning lots even today, and thinking about some of this stuff. This is a nice way for me to reflect even on last week, right? In those learning walks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for catching up on the chat, because I always worry because I don't want to read too much, and I always worry I press something and then I lose you. So thank you so much. I might just switch the light on because it's got very dark and I don't want to disappear. So just give me one.
Yeah, you bet. We've been reflecting for a while, and looks like it got dark in Slovakia, and like I said, it's starting to snow here in the Arctic. You see out our window here, it's nice and some snow falling here in end of March. I'm considering springtime and warm. When it's warm in the Arctic, it snows. So, but you know, we do a lot with place-based education and land-based education. So I love talking about the environment. You know, we started talking about the weather, and just I'm always thinking about that because you know we're always looking at ways to connect land to the learning here, right? So it's always on my mind. It's a natural thing to talk about when we think about inquiry. For us, you know, we have capable citizens through indigenized education. That's our vision statement, and we really mean it. Our students are already capable. They've come to school capable, and how do we play to their strengths and then program to their interests, and how do we also lift them up in things that they need to improve upon, like anyone, right? In the right way, the encouraging way, not the discouraging way. So that's something I'm thinking about more and more, and how do I model that, like I said, with teachers. Something as simple as maybe putting my laptop away. I think in the next couple of learning walks, I think I'm really going to try and be a little more present in the moment. And I'm still going to take some photos, though. I am going to grab my phone and snap some, document some learning. When you think about, you know, inquiry, I'm going to try to do that without being too distracted, still being present. Yeah.
Yeah, I always take so many photos, and I just, you know, like even of the like chairs, different chairs or whatever, because it kind of tells me so much about the school and the classroom and the teacher. But I love the concept of indigenized education, because that's something that is very particular for your region, for your area. So I would love to know a little bit more about that. Like, what does it involve? Like, how do you connect communities? And like, because that's absolutely fascinating for me.
Yeah, we have this fantastic inquiry cycle that connects indigenized education really well. Certainly a huge priority for us, right? And it's really about honoring the land that we're in, the people that we're serving, involving elders and knowledge keepers, and getting outside, being outside. And whether we bring elders into the classrooms at times, but also getting out on the land. So you'll see our schools involved. Like right now, we have a whole school approach to muskrat trapping. So 2 of our schools are really focused on catching muskrats and what that means for the ecosystem, the science behind it, the tradition behind it. So they're going out and they're actually going to do that as well. They're going to check the traps and catch muskrats. We've seen schools build igloos nearby the school, or sometimes a little bit away. A lot of our schools have cabins. Our school in Sikachik has a camp right next to it. I saw there's Lara posting there. She's a former principal in Sikachik. Hi, Lara. And you know, so indigenized education is just a way of life for us, and it's not just a vision statement. We try to live that vision every day, and I'm really proud of that piece of what we do. And it's really about honoring the families and the students that we serve, their way of life. And that's why we think the inquiry model, it really is an indigenous way of seeing the world and being curious. So we try to connect those 3 eyes as much as we can.
You mentioned
yeah.
I'll again, and I'll just put every time I hear the word, I put a tally on because I just love it. But it is really the core, isn't it? Because if you weren't interested, if you weren't curious about the communities, if we weren't inviting them in, if you were just in the classrooms, not looking outside what needs to be done and how we can help, what would be the point? You know, often, you know, you see things happening and there are no connections with the communities, with the places and with people. And I often wonder, like, what is the purpose of this? What is the point? Like, why is it so isolated if you can make it, you can connect it? Like when teachers ask me always at this workshop, they always ask me like, oh, but just give me the worksheet, give me whatever and I'll do it. And I'm like, well, you know, if anybody gives you that, please let me know, because that is absolutely what we're not doing here. And they are often disappointed. And I always try to encourage them to think of the connections, to think of how you connect whatever you're doing in the classroom with the world outside, with their lives, with the interest, with the community. Because, you know, like at the moment we have a presidential election. elections happening in Slovakia.
Oh,
So we're
right.
going to have a round next weekend. And, I told them, just bring the graphs in, bring the, like, just bring the information, like, try to analyze it. You can use critical thinking skills. You can have discussions,
Yes.
and then you say things like, oh, they're worried because they don't want parents, saying,
Of course. Yeah, upset somebody or have different views, right? Yeah, but it's on everyone's mind. So you're like ignoring this huge curiosity that's like obvious, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I often say, because that's kind of the second thing. First thing is like, I want to do it. I don't know how. So I said, well, connect me, whatever.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, but then they say, well, if you bring these themes, if you bring these like controversy often into the classroom, they say we have the parents who will be like writing to the school, or there's something's been going on. And I often tell them, like, bring them in the classroom, connect with them, show them the documents, show
Yeah.
them what you're trying to say in the
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah. Set the intention, right? Show your intentions as the educator, right? Make it clear so they're not wondering about that negative side of it, right? Show how you're, doing it in the right kind of way or the supportive way, right? And still touch on that topic because, I mean, yeah, that's the old adage, never talk about politics. Well, how do you avoid that in certain curriculums for one? And then, yeah, you got this big, national event happening that's clearly on everyone's mind. So why wouldn't you tap into that in the right way, of course, right? Yeah.
I'm just thinking like you need to kind of let go of that fear and like be confident into what is your goal, what you're trying to achieve, like
Yes.
because even when I have this little like space activity, at the workshop, and I often tell them like, I could have told you just the definition of what the constellation is, and you could have written it
Sure.
down, and that's
Yeah.
the end of the discussion. You would have never questioned it. You wouldn't have asked, where do you have the information? You would have just taken the information and said, okay, I know now. But by you trying to figure out the things, having these discussions, trying to find different sources, having a look at the myths and legends of stars and everything,
Awesome.
bring more kind of interest into the theme that you may not even, think about in the and realizing that, wow, this is actually cool. Like I didn't think there are things like this, and I'm thinking we trying to provide this in the classroom. This
Oh
personal
yeah.
connection, whatever topic you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is. You're trying to provide opportunities for them to connect with the content in a meaningful way so they can personalize it, so they can make it part of their identity and make it authentic. So but it's a long journey, like I guess with you have teachers who coming in who are familiar with inquiry often, who have people like Jessica or Trev coming in and just like these celebrities and like are excited.
Yeah. Definitely
And
experienced
here
that this week a bit. Yeah, for sure. That was her first time up, Jessica. So it was fun for the staff that had read her book. Yeah, for sure.
and it's wonderful that you kind of you got to there. Obviously it wasn't there from the beginning. You had to kind of build up, you had to cultivate that culture of, but it's kind of this is why I asked about indigenizing, because it's that culture of support and communities and awareness of everybody brings the piece of them into the whole, isn't it? It's not about separating or trying to find the one right way of doing
Yeah.
it. And this is why I love inquiry, because it really gives us the kind of one tool that we can connect so many things within any subject or anything. But behind that is that, the notion of that curiosity, that intention, that you have to, as we said at the beginning or earlier on, the belief system, or the kind of seeing the importance of, seeing the power of.
Yeah.
And this is why I want to, express some gratitude for sharing all this content. And I know there are educators on here, or maybe they will watch later, who are sharing their content, who are posting, who are having these discussions and debates. And I think it's so important because it's building us up. it's helping us to kind of know that there are people out there who are alike, you know, and who do have, you know, this kind of wealth of resources, wealth of experiences to share the power of inquiry. Because often, you know, I feel like I'm a little bit lonely, and people like you and Trev and Jess and I don't know, Misty, you know, and you know, so many lovely educators who actually here now, you know, we can have these discussions and we help each other out, you know, because that is so important. Because I was in a school where I was on my own, and I would have loved this community, and I didn't have it. I wasn't on social media. I
Yeah.
was not. Yeah, I was just in my classroom. And actually, what you said before, like when the examiners came in the PYP program I was in, I was actually delighted to see and get some feedback from them and have these discussions, because I miss that so
That's
much. But
awesome.
thanks to my book, the kind of I kind of revived the connections with the educators as well as authors, and I'm so grateful for that, because I need it so much, more than anything, any time ever. I needed this because we having a big changes here in Slovakia, and
Yeah, it's
the,
interesting.
it you know, it's interesting, difficult,
Yeah,
exciting at the same time, and
change, right? Change is hard too, right? Anything that's unknown, right? That unknown curiosity, right? It's can be uncomfortable, even though you're interested in it, right? So change is hard for humans, right? And no, even though we thrive on it, sometimes it can also scare us a bit, right? So yeah, certainly our learners. That's when teachers come in and support them in that way, right? So
yeah. I
yeah.
bring them in, bring them all in, as you say, you know, like connect everybody with everybody, and make it meaningful. And, you know, then at the end of the day, you know, like the learners will have to make their own paths, just like you did with your things, like you were telling us about, you know, like that combination with the basketball and music and everything, that is your unique, you know, like self, you know, like you do
Hmm.
your DJ and all that. Like, I think just it's incredible, but nobody could tell you, okay, you're gonna get into music industry now, then you're gonna go and play some basketball there, and you will say,
Hmm.
okay, do this, I'll do that, and then you wouldn't know, you wouldn't figure out anything, because like some people would be guiding you all the time to do this and that. You had to kind of find your way of making these personalized connections, and that's what brought you here. And I think that's what often teachers forget about, that, you know, like at the end of the day, no matter what we present, they will have to make their own connections, and they will, but we want
Hmm.
them to make positive connections as possible. And
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that really makes me think, Veronica, like this whole idea around positive connections, right? Like when I was younger in my career, really like as an educator, discouraged to have any type of social media. And so, like I said, some of my colleagues really inspired me recently around that documentation, making learning visible, just showing what our schools are doing. So I decided to start an Instagram account, focused on education, because there is a lot of great things happening. I felt it's important that I lift it up, but we as well, like we talk about community of educators here in my region, the region that I serve. But I think online as well, through social media, we can make positive connections. We can be a community of educators, what we're doing today, and continue to support one another. Like social media is not all bad and it's not all good, but it's a tool, and it really depends on what you want to focus on. The world can be a terrible place or an amazing place, and it's really about your mindset, where you focus your attention. And if you want to get on social media and look at negative posts about whatever, you'll find it. If you want to find someone out there in life that's going to discourage you, you'll find them. But
yeah,
there's also people out there that will lift you up. And I think, for me, Veronica, today's a good example of that. We don't know each other that well. We've just been sharing some insight around education with one another. And, today here we are connecting between the Canadian Arctic, and the high Arctic, and all the way to Slovakia, and yet we have lots in common, and we start talking the lingo around inquiry and education. And so I think we just need to do more of that. I think you can decide how you want to use social media, and I think that's important to show our students that they're engulfed in it. And it can be a really positive thing. It can be a really negative thing. I watched a really interesting TED Talk on my learning walks last week, where the educator was showing a quick film around how books could make you reclusive. So, when has anyone ever said reading a book is negative, right? But they showed like you could get addicted to them. You could be all alone. You'll stay, in your room and never come out. It's a tool like anything. It's how you use it, right? So I think social media, we need to juxtapose that as well and say like, yes, there is a really negative side to social media. The Surgeon General in the United States recently came out and spoke to that, but how we use it, how we teach to it as a tool and support our younger generation who's engulfed in it, as well as some of us like in our 40s that are just getting back into it a bit. I think it's really about how you use it, right? And it is a tool. So for me, I'm hoping it will become more of a community of educators for me, a support system. I've found it very inspiring. My handle is about inspiring, inquiry-inspired leadership. But I'm being inspired by the people that I'm following lately and seeing the learning in their rooms and the sticky notes, the walls, like you name it, or just the moves. And it's not always the super well-known authors that get me excited. They do, of course, but some of these other people I've just recently met, someone like yourself, some of the people that are sharing their thoughts today inspire me. So I think that's really healthy. I think that's really positive. It just shows you that social media, when you have the right mindset and when you go looking for what you need and what will help you in something as important as education, it can be a great and powerful tool, but really it's our mindset and our approach to how we use it, right? Same thing can be said about books, cars, computers, you name it, right? So a lot of it's mindset and then your intention and how you go about using it and what you put out as well. If I'm going to post negative things and vent all the time, then that's what my social media is going to become. But I have to have that growth mindset and focus on important things like learning, inquiry, provocations, all the great things that come with what I could share out. I have to have the right mindset. And then I think the more you put in that way, the more you'll get back. So I'm starting to meet more people last several months for me. It's not about followers for me. It's more about like authentic connections and really learning from each other. So I've learned a lot about social media, even just in the last 5 or 6 months, as old as I am at 45, I'm joking a bit, but you got to have that right mindset, I think. And social media, Instagram, you name it, other forms of social media are a tool. And we as humans have to decide critically how we're going to use that tool. And we have to help the younger generation with that. And that's universal across the world, right? We need critical thinkers, especially when you think of AI and all the changes that are coming. How are we still developing human intelligence, not just artificial intelligence and machines? How are we using and interfacing with everything that's coming at us in a changing world? Now more than ever, our younger learners really need to be able to think critically and see these things as tools, but they are the ones leading it and using it. As critical, smart human beings thinking about the world around them.
Totally. And I'm 100% with you on that. And I loved when you mentioned intention, but because I think that's important. For me, it's not as much as what you do on social media, but why you do it. What is the reasoning behind it? And things will find you. The things that you will focus on, like if we just go inquiry, that will be feeding us with inquiry and more people and more people.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. But going back to, I know people also mentioned it here about the mental health and the well-being and how important is that. And I think that that is the core of everything, isn't it? Because like if you know that like the social media is for me to be used and not to be, I am not going to be used by social media. It's totally different perspective, like asking about like what are you trying to get, and if you're trying to get the approval and like as you said, the number of followers or likes, and you need asking questions. Why do I seek this? What is there behind this that I need this for my life? And again, schools can provide these discussions and they can ask, like, what is it behind? Like, what is my value? What who determines the value? And I think whatever we do at school, like it all, everything revolves around the value system of communities, of individuals, of the school, on the mission statements, and it's all wrapped up. But if you don't ask this, then you just caught up in it, and I think you can really easily get lost in it. So I think this kind of awareness of, oh, what am I doing and why, it can help them to kind of figure out, or actually this is becoming a little bit unhealthy, because I'm relying now on this algorithm to bring me
Right.
happiness, or like
Yeah.
to show me what I'm worth. So I
Yeah.
think there need to be discussions behind it, but I think we were brave enough to kind of at our age to kind of experiment with social media, and I'm really grateful for that. And we have to catch up with that at the end. We
Yeah.
can't just ignore for the rest of our lives. And as you
Yeah.
said, I wouldn't be having this discussion today together if it didn't exist. So I'm really,
Yeah.
like a wonderful community with people.
Yeah.
We bring and we have worldwide, and that's just has no borders. And this is what absolutely for me, it's like inquiries, like universal language that we can communicate with, and we can share, and we can
Mm-hmm.
inspire each other with. So I know, Devin, we could just go on and on and on today, but I know it's Saturday and you want to you want to spend some time with your little ones and your
Yeah.
wife, have a
Well,
nice, relaxing day as well.
yeah. Yeah.
But
It's all about balance, right? Yeah. It's good to do
it's all
both. Yeah.
sure. But I'm really hoping this is not our last talk, and I would love to catch up and maybe like narrow down some topic or something that comes up for you or me
Yeah.
in team, and then see what people are saying, what they maybe need and want. And I would love to connect. Now you know how it's done. We can reconnect
Yeah.
again and do this.
Yeah. I'm not like super Instagram savvy. I've been learning over the last 5 or 6 months. I think this is my first actual live I've ever done, like at all,
Very
even like by myself. I've never gone live, so this was super fun. Really liked, speaking with you and the questions you asked, and just the back and forth about our experiences, and really, grateful to anyone that tuned in over the last hour and almost a half now. And even just seeing
goodness.
some of the other last posts, Shanika was talking about, like, how the resource is used, talking about social media, intention behind it, and Wondering Teacher mentioned purpose, right? That's what we were talking about. So, that curiosity around inquiry, I think, is a very human thing, and people want to know the why, right? Simon Sinek talks a lot about the whys. He's become famous just around that topic, really. You look at the golden circle, and it is very innate and human, and also socialized to some extent, just the curiosity and the why. But we as educators have that importance to help shape and support the youth that are so curious and are wondering about their own whys in life, and we can help really shape that in working with their families. And something that's coming at them with all the changes in technology, it's no better time to connect like humans still and
Yeah,
support one another and not feel lonely. And you look at the research around wellness right now, people do feel disconnected, even though we are arguably more connected than ever, but it's about how we are connecting. So today was, for me, really, I really appreciated it because it was positive and it was thought provoking, and engaging with you and just seeing people add their own thoughts through the chat, for me, just gets my brain thinking more about inquiry and about human connection, right? And I think that's we need to do more of that in the right ways, using tools like social media, Instagram, you name it. But I think we have to be very intentional in how we connect. So today's topic for me was, really rewarding and just positive. And yeah, it makes me proud too to share a little bit of the work in our region. And I really want to hear from others about the great work that you're doing. I've seen photos and some videos, but yeah, certainly want to connect with you again, Veronika, because I think the role that you have currently and your experience in education, for me, is very, very interesting, and I'd like to know more about you. I'm still curious. So the curiosity is still there with that inquiry mindset.
I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for being curious and interested and wanting to connect on a Saturday. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge and experiences, and, giving us the sense of who you are as a leader, and, what can you provide for the community of inquirers. And thank you so much for sharing that awesome story as well, and bringing in your family member, that you are human. Like when I had the other day, I had a visit in Madagascar, and one of the students asked me, are you real? And this is the age we live in. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, let me pinch myself to check. And I just started pinching myself and
Oh, that's
screaming.
funny. That's so
But
funny.
well,
Yeah.
this is evening, kids are inquiring and wondering and curious. Is this person actually confirm, yes, Devin is real.
Yeah, I'm a real person. Yeah.
Conversation in real time and space. And thank you so much for joining me. And I guess have a nice spring break.
Yeah, you
And
too. I'll be working a little bit next week, but some time with the family, with some balance with the schools closed, most of them. So thank you for that, Veronika. Like I said, I'm really grateful. Hope this isn't the last time that we connect like this. I think we got. I'm more curious now than when I started. So I got lots of things I'd like to ask you and talk about at a different time for sure.
me too. Me too. I have so many more questions, but as I said, I don't want to take all your day. I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. It's the evening, but you have the whole day ahead.
No worries. I thought we connected at a good time. So yeah, thank you. It was your idea. So thank you, Veronika. Thank you to anyone that's put their thoughts in the chat and spending their Saturday with us around Inquiry. I'm just very grateful, and feel free to follow me. I'll certainly follow you as well, and love to see the posts and the sharing around education and helping youth out there in the world, because there's so many great things happening, and we just need to celebrate each other a little bit more, I'd say, in this day and age. So hoping to see more and more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, the Wandering Teacher and everybody else. She's saying thank you. It was great learning with you. The same for us. It's a learning journey. So thank you for being on the journey with me. And have a lovely weekend, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Thank you.
one.
Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely weekend.